So I've had a lot of fun working with that. So
That's great. And Daisy?
I also had that experience that Stephanie described of taking a linguistics class and loving it. And it was taught by a really wonderful professor, and so I enjoyed working with her. And she was someone who worked with a California language, Eastern Pomo. So she kind of introduced me to all of these kind of like 100 years of people who'd done this wonderful work with languages. And so much of it involved going out with recording equipment and working with people that they had long relationships with, where they would record stories and conversation. And I spent about 10 years working, teaching, and not being in school after I did my undergrad. And one of the things that I did was I worked as a teacher, and I also worked with kind of community-based organizing stuff.
Okay.
And when working with endangered languages and revitalization and maintenance became something that it was really possible to do, and you could do it as part of a linguistics degree, it kind of brought all those interests together for me. So there's a big piece of it that has to do with education and community stuff.
So this is the 13th annual workshop. How long have you been with working with this conference?
Well, I'm a third-year student,
Okay.
and so this is my third year helping with the workshop, and my second year as one of the coordinators.
Okay.
Last year we had another wonderful co-coordinator, Carrie Meeker, and so this is now my third year, and I'm really grateful that Stephanie is here to coordinate it with me.
And I'm just a first year, so this is my first experience with the conference.
So the call for papers has ended. So can you talk about what we have to look forward to at this conference?
Sure.
Yeah, I know we've got a lot of abstracts from all over U.S. and Canada, and I know we have at least one from Sweden, so it'll be very international.
And even we also have from Mexico. I think there are several abstracts that are about Brazilian languages and Amazonian languages. There are several about Southwest American languages.
I saw a number of Algonquian ones. I think there's Blackfoot, Anishinaabe one.
Michif.
Yep, the Cree French.
Several folks from Canada. And we've also, our invited keynote speaker is a woman named Sally Rice who works up in, she's at the University of Alberta. And she does both work on semantics, so trying to understand what things really mean and how that works. And then she works with Athabascan languages. And also she has a kind of long ongoing project that's a documentation and revitalization project, like the one that, like the kinds of ones that we've been talking about. And then we also have an invited panel of emerging scholars who are members of tribes and Native communities who are doing work on their own language. So they're going to be talking about that experience.
Yeah. Is there anybody that would be on that panel that is from the local community working on, for instance, the Chumash language?
No, actually, although we would love to have someone from the local community. So we would definitely invite anyone who's out there who would be interested in joining that panel to call us up or send us an email, and we'll find a way to include them.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be sure if I have any contacts that I can forward the information to.
Definitely. We would love that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, now that, when I was learning part of the language, our language was preserved on wax cylinders. And there's just been, an enormous amount of multimedia updates and stuff like that. Can you talk about how it is that languages are being preserved in the field now?
Well, I think there's an emphasis on using digital media now. And digital media is really wonderful because it doesn't require these big physical storage spaces in the same way that some of the other media, older media did. And it can be more reliable, although usually you also create hard copy backups because you want to make sure that your data is safe and protected. So you have lots of copies everywhere. But and there's also kind of, I think now, at least for the work that I'm doing, there's much more of an interest in making sure that you can use video if it's possible for you to record video, because there's so much that happens in the way that people use language that really is about their body as well as, you know, in their face and other things that aren't just recorded on an audio track. So that's something that I would say is if you can use video, go for it. There's no reason not to.
Body language expression and so forth.
Sure, yeah. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and even just to tell who's looking at who during the conversation is huge.
Right.
Yeah. And I think also, you know, you talked about the wax cylinders. I think something else that's really important to do and that people are doing a lot of now is digitizing old materials and kind of making them accessible again, because it's not like anyone can just go listen to a wax cylinder. But if someone makes the effort, and you can get funding to do this from the federal government, to transfer that onto a hard drive, onto a CD, then you can distribute that and everyone can listen to it. Some people, you know, they're able now to listen to their great-grandparents and they can hear the sound of their voice, which is such a wonderful blessing to have that.
Right.
So I think that's another very exciting thing, which sometimes gets overlooked because people are excited about making new recordings and they're not necessarily thinking about what's already been done and all of the work that people have done up to now.
Right. Yeah, I think that, you know, within our community there has been work translating the wax cylinder tapes and putting them on, at the time it was cassette tapes.
Right.
So, you know, hopefully that somebody is out there converting those over to DVD or then and putting them on CDs and so forth. And it's just wonderful that, you know, with the internet and stuff, it just makes it the availability to everybody so much more accessible.
Yeah, and there are a number of online archives that are open access, or, you know, the person who's depositing the information can control the access. Like there's the free one, archive.org, has a lot of good material. It's a lot of old material, which is a lot of fun. And OLAC. OLAC has a lot of stuff as well.
I mean, I think the issue of access is something that's really important to pay attention to, and not every community is going to want everything to be accessible to everybody.
Right.
And that's sort of one of the challenges of the internet, is that a lot of things, you know, if you put stuff on the internet, it's almost instantly accessible unless you do a lot of work ahead of time to control that.
Having member logins and so forth.
Right. Yeah. And so I would say that there are, one of the things that linguists are really conscientious about in terms of how you archive something is you establish ahead of time when you're recording someone's voice, that's a very personal thing. And so you establish an agreement with them and their family members and the community that they belong to about what kinds of access they're comfortable with. And there are great programs and you know, ways of storing that information online and through these archives that have made it easy to have that they call it graded access, so to make things accessible only as much as people are willing to have them be accessible. Right. Some communities, like you know, there are communities that have decided that they don't want any recordings of their language to be available to anyone outside the tribe, and that's a completely legitimate and possible decision for them to make. They can do that. So it's different for different people.
We have projects that are ongoing about, I guess, would be immersion programs and so forth. Can you explain, like, you know, how something like that would work when you're going into a community for some communities who have really lost their languages or you know, are endangered of losing the language, and like for somebody from your department going in there and doing a project like that with language immersion.
Yeah, I think it's a very hard thing because it puts